Hey there, how's it going? I am not lost in the wilderness, you will be happy to hear. This is actually a city park here in Northern California. Really pretty. Lots of nice greenery here after a lot of rain. A beautiful spring day. However, in this video I will be telling the story of when I did get lost in the wilderness of Northern California. This was a number of months ago, September or October of last year. Now, the first thing that I'm going to mention here is if you would like to see a movie of this whole experience as it is happening, I was vlogging this, not knowing I was going to get lost, of course. And so check the link down below this video if you want to watch that movie. It's like a 70-minute movie with amazing footage of the wilderness of Northern California. Lots of my experiences hiking in the backcountry. It was a multi-day backcountry backpacking trip in which I was hiking on trails, and in the course of it I accidentally got lost, and I will explain that in the course of this video here. So this is going to be a spoiler video. I will be, telling what happens in that movie. However, the movie contains a lot of details that I will not be covering here. So feel free to click that link down below to watch my full-length movie, Broken Down, An Adventure in the Wilderness. Nice little hiking trail here. I will be connecting into another trail and getting into some woods up there. So this will be a nice little hike of its own. All right, so here's what happened. I'm going to tell the story as briefly as I can, and then offer some sort of thoughts and recollections and whatnot, ponderings on what happened and why and what the experience was like to actually go through something like that. So the deal was that last fall, then I decided to go on a backpacking trip in the Marble Mountains of Northern California. It is an area that I had been to several times before. I went there backpacking with my family as a kid, and then later as an adult on my own several times. And so I was quite familiar with the area. There are trails all throughout the wilderness area there that are well-maintained trails, usually, except for one little hint there. And it is just absolutely stunning, beautiful wilderness. It is not all that popular. Lots of lakes, stocked lakes with fish. You can go fishing and oftentimes have a whole lake to yourself. Really amazing place to explore, get out of the city, away from civilization and the rat race, and experience the wilderness. And so I decided to go on a multi-day trip. And so I get all ready to roll, got all my gear, my food and everything, get my permits, and I start driving out to the trailhead. I turn off the highway, turn onto these like Forest Service dirt roads that you have to drive out. It's like a 15-mile drive out these roads. You don't tend to see hardly any vehicles. It is very steep, and at one point then my truck dies on me, just cuts out all of a sudden. About a half mile or so from the trailhead, which means way the heck up these dirt roads. I don't have any cell phone reception. I try everything to restart the truck. It is not happening. It is totally dead. To make a long story short, I end up meeting some hunters who have cell phone reception. We call a tow truck. I get the truck towed into the nearest little town called Happy Camp. Spend the night in the back of the truck. The next morning, the mechanic there takes a look at it, and he says, well, your fuel pump is out, and normally I could order the part, have it delivered by tomorrow, fix it, it'll cost you some bucks, but I could have you rolling by tomorrow afternoon. However, I'm going in for hip surgery tomorrow. I'm going to be out of commission for a couple of weeks. I'm the only mechanic in town. Sorry, you're out of luck. You're going to have this thing towed to some other town. And this town is like totally middle of nowhere, out of the way, hours from any other small little town. Basically, it was going to cost so much to tow it that I offered to sell the truck to the mechanic, and he bought it. And so there I am now with my backpack full of my backpacking stuff. I mailed a couple of boxes from that little town so that I didn't have to carry it. I couldn't, carry all the stuff that I had in my truck, of course. And so I decided, you know what? I'm going backpacking anyways. And so I hitchhiked up to the trailhead, a different trailhead than the one that I tried to get to before, and went on my adventure in the wilderness. I spent, I think, 4 nights out there. And my plan then was to hike back on the trail to the trailhead that I had originally been trying to drive to, and then from there I would walk and hitchhike down to the highway that I had originally been driving up, and then hitchhike out of there and have a successful, hopefully, backpacking trip. So here's where things went wrong. The last day of my wilderness adventure out there, then I'm by this beautiful lake. I have a topographic map of the area there, and I can see on the map it's going to be 7-8 miles or so of hiking on this trail that I had not hiked before because I had come a different way. Getting in there, I was sort of doing a, not a loop, but like a horseshoe. And so my mission for today goes like this. I hike from Yukonom Lake here to the Johnson's Hunting Ground trailhead. That is going to be 6, 7, 8 miles, something like that. Then I will be at the Jeep Roads near where my truck broke down. From there, it is a long downhill hike of 10, 12 miles, something like that. Fortunately, it will be all downhill. And so I knew what I had ahead of me. It was going to be a long, half a day's hike or so to get to the trailhead. And then from there, it was going to be a long hike down these roads, the same ones that I had driven up and ultimately broke down on. I would actually be walking right past the spot where I had broken down. And so I would either end up hiking all the way out of there, or maybe a car would come along and I would get a ride, whatever. I knew it was going to be a long day. And so I get hiking along, backpack on my back, feeling good, not as much weight because I'd eaten all the food that I'd brought in. Hey there. Go on. Coming through. Hey bear. There you go. Coming through. And about 2 miles or so into my hike, I get to a junction where there was no junction on my map. And I'm like, what the hell? Which way am I supposed to go? What the hell? A junction, a crossing point of 2 trails. I was not expecting another trail. I don't remember one on the map. Because they were both kind of light trails. And so I hiked up one and got to this viewpoint at the top, and then there was this trail going off in this totally weird direction relative to what it looked like on my map. So I double checked the map and it looked like, well, I must have been supposed to go left instead of straight, because that direction makes a lot more sense based on what's on the map. And so I went back to that other junction, started hiking up it, and then that trail just petered out. And so that is, of course, pretty distressing. You're out there in the wilderness counting on this trail to get you back home. And so I checked my map again, had a sense of the right general direction to go, I hoped. And so I decided, okay, I'm just going to head off trail here and, navigate using the map and the, landmarks, the mountains and the lakes and everything, and give this a try. I didn't know what else to do at that point, and so decided to go for it. And so I start hiking off trail, and so I get up on a high point. I could see Yukonom Lake, where I had started earlier that morning, and then on the other side I'm looking down into this just kind of deep, vast valley canyon with a small little lake down there, and I look on the map and see a small little lake on the map as well, and so I think that must be the right direction. So I start hiking in that general direction, but it gets thick with bushes and trees. There's rocks, boulders. And so at some point then I just decide, this is no good, wherever I'm going, it's only getting harder and harder. And so I decide to head back to the trail that I'd been hiking up out of that lake, since I could still see the lake from certain points. And so I head in that direction. Finally, fortunately, then I find the trail that I had been on before. I hike back up it, and then there I am back at that same junction I had been before, maybe 2 hours earlier at that point. And so that is a very frustrating thing. I'm using up my time, my energy. I have a long hike out of there once I even get to the trailhead and get to the road. And I had started off the day feeling confident, strong, energetic, good to go. And I am just depleting my energy being lost like this. And so at that point then I decide, okay, now I'm going to try the other trail that I hadn't gone before because it seemed like the wrong direction. And I'm going to hope that it makes a sudden left-hand turn at some point as the map indicates. I start hiking down that trail, and sure enough, it makes a hard left-hand turn, and I am reassured that this must be the correct trail. I'm hiking along that trail for 45 minutes or something, and it peters out on me, just like the other ones. Even though it seemed very clearly to be the correct trail. And so I go back, retrace my steps, try some other paths. Again, they're just kind of multiple trails that go off in different directions. It's like they're deer trails or something. And they just peter out. And there I am in the wilderness. And I have exhausted all my options. I'd already explored the other area. And so I have nothing left to do other than, again, go off trail into the wilderness and hope for the best. Nice shot of the Ukiah Valley here. So the area that I'm talking about, the Marble Mountains, is north of here, several hours driving towards the Oregon border, over from the Eureka and Arcata area. And so that is when I get lost in the wilderness for the second time that day, and it becomes more serious in that I have long left behind the trail that I was on. I cannot see that lake that I could see. It is unfamiliar territory for me now. My only real saving grace is that I am basically headed towards one trail like this, and then there was the trail that I hiked up that is over this way, going like this, a couple miles away or so, and it is rugged terrain, but I am kind of boxed in by trails, and so I am assuming that if I'm headed generally towards both of those trails, then I must surely run into one of them. I did have a topo map, but when you go backpacking in designated wilderness like that with trails, you're not going planning to be navigating off trail. That is a completely and totally different thing. Never in my years and years of backpacking in the wilderness have I been on a established trail that simply disappeared like that. That is not supposed to happen when it is something that is, clearly designated on the trail. Now, it had said on the map, trail not suitable for livestock. And so I was assuming then that it would be a less main trail as opposed to some of the other ones. It might be, smaller, but still it should not just disappear. A trail should be clear. You should be able to see, here's the trail, that is not the trail. It's, it's obvious. You're not just going to wander off it and not be able to find it. This was, a trail that just completely disappeared, like you're just there. And you're like, well, is this, could that be the trail? There's sort of, a little bit of a line there. That's what it looked like. Now, I also did actually have a compass, and I did pull out my map from time to time to get my bearings as best as I could. The thing is that when you are down in the trees as I was, navigating by a topo map is very difficult to pinpoint your position exactly. And basically I felt that my best bet was to head for these two converging trails, and that ultimately I would end up hitting one of them. And so I continued hiking through various terrain. Sometimes it was fairly wide open. I would get up on saddles, going through trees, but I kept hiking and hiking and hiking, and I was not seeing sign of a trail, civilization, signs, anything like that. I was fully smack in the wilderness at that point, you know, long ways past the trail that I had been on before. And so I was, you know, flying blind, so to speak, and just hoping on a wing and a prayer that I would come across one of those other trails. And so what is that like? It is definitely very freaky when you realize that you have no, you know, crutch, no safety net. Nobody knows what you're going through. Things got hairier and hairier. I ended up, you know, down in these gullies, going down like super steep slopes like this, down in creeks. This is pretty messed up, folks. Unfortunately, that trail did not save me. It completely just petered out all of a sudden. Totally weird. And so I was definitely, you know, freaking out pretty hardcore, but just doing my best to maintain my, you know, mental clarity and not get overwhelmed. And I would just kind of reassure myself from time to time that, okay, it's, you know, it's a sunny day. You're not getting poured down on. You're not going to you know, get cold and get hypothermic here. I did have a little bit of food left. There was abundant water. And so I could have survived out there actually for, you know, a couple of weeks. I had a tent and sleeping bag. I would stay warm. And so I was going to get out of there eventually if I didn't break a leg, fall off a cliff, etc. But, you know, the prospect of spending days out there is definitely not a very comforting thing to think about, that you might end up having to pitch your tent there, you know, still not finding the trail, wake up in the morning, do it all over again, and you don't know if you're, you know, getting further away from your ultimate savior point, or what, if you're getting down into some canyon that's going to become completely impenetrable, etc. And so you can really freak yourself out thinking about all the possibilities of what can go wrong. And so how I ultimately ended up getting myself out of that situation was I was deep down in a creek. Now, following a creek is oftentimes a good way to get yourself back to something, because, you know, the trails tend to follow valleys and creek beds more or less, and the creeks go downhill and eventually head to bigger creeks and to rivers. And so those creeks will go to, you know, a road or a town eventually. That doesn't necessarily mean that they are the quickest route to a trail, however. And so eventually I decided it was time to get out of this creek because it was just getting too hard to navigate. And so I had to decide at that point, left or right, up this bank or this other bank. And because there was that other trail that was more or less off to my right, even though there was another trail straight ahead of me, I thought, okay, I'm going to veer right and hope that that gets me over to that other trail. And so I head up that steep bank, and within like 5 minutes I hit a trail. And I am just overjoyed as hell, of course. I follow that down, and within 15 minutes or so, then I get to a junction that I recognize. And it is actually the point at which I had gone left up that trail to get to the first lake that I stayed at that night. And so I hadn't gone up the trail that I had just found that had ultimately saved me. But at least at that point, I knew that I was saved. I knew how far I had to go from there to get back to the trailhead that I had first hiked up, even though that wasn't where I was trying to get to that day. And so I then hiked from there several hours more to the trailhead, and from there I was then at the Jeep road nobody else around. I ended up hiking 8 or 10 miles more from that point. Fortunately, it was at least like a easy mile downhill. Into the evening, it started getting dark, and I ended up sleeping in my tent by the side of the road and the river there. Got up in the morning and continued hiking. Hiked a couple more miles. Finally got a ride into the town there of Happy Camp, where I left my truck with the mechanic and started hitchhiking out of there. And that is a whole nother crazy experience, just trying to hitchhike back to a more major town from there. So again, check the link down below this video to watch my movie, Broken Down, An Adventure in the Wilderness. Hope you enjoy it, and thanks for watching. As for my upcoming plans, I just booked flights today, heading somewhere new in a week, first within the United States, and then after that, a new country. So lots more coming. All right, take it easy. And don't get lost.